Man, you're hearing a lot of talk about a constitutional crisis from the media, from the liberals. Can you tell the difference between the media and the liberals and the Democrats? How are we sounding, by the way, Mr. Producer, okay? All right. Constitutional crisis. Now, I want you to think about something. On this program, I talk about the Constitution all the time. The power of the courts. Right now, far outside what the framers intended. They don't call that a constitutional crisis. The federal bureaucracy, 2 million strong. You won't find that in the Constitution, the entrenched federal bureaucracy. That's not a constitutional crisis. When you have presidents like Obama creating his own laws like DACA, that's not a constitutional crisis. We have Democrats insisting that we should eliminate the Electoral College. Now, why do we have the Electoral College? To make sure the small states are fairly represented. Otherwise, we never would have had a republic. They would never have joined these bigger states. There would never be a country. They say, so what? We have power. We want to get rid of it. When it comes to the Second Amendment, constantly it's under attack. They don't call that a constitutional crisis. The First Amendment. I'm not talking about freedom of press. I'm talking about religious liberty, the free exercise thereof. When that's under attack, Baker's under attack and so forth and so on, they don't call that a constitutional crisis, do they? The 10th Amendment, the Federalism Amendment, which is dismissed completely by the Supreme Court. It's in the Constitution. They don't call that a constitutional crisis. The bastardization of the 14th Amendment to suggest that what was really intended there was that foreigners who come into this country and have babies in this country and are here illegally, that they're now automatically American citizens. They don't call that a constitutional crisis. We have sanctuary cities nullifying federal law and the supremacy clause of the Constitution. They don't call that a constitutional crisis. We have a House of Representatives that intends to delve into the personal business affairs and tax returns and financial matters of the President of the United States, for which Congress has no oversight authority whatsoever. None. They don't call that a constitutional crisis. But now we have a real constitutional crisis, ladies and gentlemen, because the President of the United States, following the Vacancy Act, a real federal law, has decided to temporarily appoint Matt Whitaker, a former United States attorney, former chief of staff to Jeff Sessions, for no more than 210 days as the acting attorney general. Now, you see, we have a constitutional crisis. Now they tell us the statute's unconstitutional. Obama imposing DACA, creating a law in the Oval Office. We have an Obama Ninth Circuit, a Clinton Ninth Circuit, a left-wing Ninth Circuit that says, oh, the President of the United States can't get rid of DACA. You see, Obama can create it, but his successor can't get rid of it. Anybody follow that? Of course not. We have an Obama judge in Montana, of all places, who rules that the Keystone Pipeline cannot be built. 40 to 50,000 jobs will not be created because the State Department didn't do a sufficient or adequate job of taking into consideration climate change. They have now legalized and constitutionalized their wacko ideology. That's not a constitutional crisis. Now, let me walk through this clearly so even Lawrence Tribe, a professor of law at Harvard, can comprehend this. Let me walk through this very, very slowly so a moron like Joe Scarborough can try to digest it and follow the bouncing ball. The President of the United States is the executive branch. Everybody below him is inferior. The only issue is whether we're talking about a principal officer or an inferior officer under Morrison v. Olson, a 1988 decision by the Supreme Court, where Morrison, the independent counsel, her constitutionality was challenged by Ted Olson, who was under investigation, and wrongly so. the court stupidly decided that the independent counsel is constitutional, and they gave a number of reasons for it, various elements that have to be met. And among other things, the independent counsel, they said, well, they're not really independent. They have to report to somebody. There's a special court that's set up, a special division for the Independent Counsel Act that was set up, and so forth and so on. Now, if the independent counsel truly were independent, well, then that would be a problem. Now, why does that matter? Because there's another part of the Constitution, and I've talked about it myself repeatedly, called the Appointments Clause. And what that means is, if you're going to appoint somebody who is in a very senior position, if you're going to appoint somebody in a very senior position, the president must nominate them, and the Senate must decide whether or not it's going to confirm the person. So I've said over and over again, as has Professor Calabresi, well, then that's Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller is the most powerful prosecutor in the United States. He's the most powerful prosecutor in the United States. It's not enough that he reports, theoretically anyway, to the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. That's not enough. The U.S. Attorney in every district, all 91, actually 93, they all report to the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, but they all have to be nominated and confirmed. The special counsel, Mr. Mueller, is at least theoretically investigating the President of the United States. So how is it that he's an inferior officer like an assistant U.S. attorney, and he didn't have to be nominated and confirmed by the Senate? It's a position I've taken and been arguing for quite some time. Now we hear, the news tells us today, as they regurgitate the Democrat talking points, now we hear Mr. Whitaker must be nominated by the president so the Senate has a chance to confirm or not confirm. Now, what's the difference, ladies and gentlemen? What's the difference between Mueller and Whitaker? Anybody know? Whitaker is a temporary appointee. The president can change his mind and send his name to the United States Senate for confirmation, but he's a temporary employee. And under the Vacancy Act, the president is following the rules. He's got good lawyers. That's what he told them to do, and that's what he's doing. Mr. Mueller has no tenure. He goes on and on and on. He's a very, very powerful man. He's more powerful than any United States attorney. And yet, he's not nominated. He's not subject to confirmation, and yet he should be. Yet he should be. Now, there's also practical reasons why the Vacancy Act was passed in the first place. You see how the Democrats slow walk the nominees, right? But the government must go on. They slow walk the nominees, but the government must go on. So the president needs an attorney general, temporary or otherwise. He needs a secretary of agriculture, temporary or otherwise. Then we hear arguments that, well, he has to follow the rules of succession. What does that mean? Well, then he has to appoint the deputy attorney general, Rosenstein, as the acting attorney general. Where's that written? Well, that's what the Constitution compels. Show me. These departments aren't even in the Constitution. These officers aren't even in the Constitution. How does the Constitution compel it? It doesn't. It doesn't. Mr. Whitaker is a acting attorney general with a temporary appointment under federal law. Mr. Mueller can go on and on and on. Now, how do I know Mr. Mueller can go on and on? Anybody know? Because every single Democrat and half the Republicans and the entire media have told us the President of the United States cannot fire Mr. Mueller or he'll be impeached. So Mr. Mueller, in some ways, is more powerful than the President of the United States. Even though the President of the United States is the head of the executive branch, he's not permitted to fire Mr. Mueller. Now, how can that be? Because they'll impeach him. And they want to pass a statute to protect him. All the mental midgets now in the majority of the House, the leadership of the mental midgets in the House of Representatives said, you know what, we're going to attach to a crucial spending bill the protection of Mr. Mueller. Had they passed any such thing for a United States attorney? No. Had they passed any such thing for any other single employee of the executive branch? No. No. And yet Mr. Mueller, they tell us, he's not a principal officer under Morrison v. Olson. No, he's just like an assistant U.S. attorney. No big deal. I mean, he reports to Rosenstein. And here's the other kicker. Congress has no power to do that. Why, Mark? It's called separation of powers. Congress cannot prevent the President of the United States from removing one of his employees, any more than the President of the United States can prevent Congress from removing one of its staffers. The President is in charge of the executive branch. They can't tell him that he cannot remove a special counsel, when in fact he can, under our Constitution and the separation of powers doctrine. Now, everything I just discussed with you took, 10 minutes? You've heard none of it in the media. None of it. Because two reasons, two possibilities. One, they are just damn stupid. The other, they're just damn liberals. Actually, there's a third. They just hate the president. Now, what Congress is considering doing, that would create a constitutional crisis. Now, they call this a broken glass moment. Haven't they keep saying this, Mr. Producer? It's broken glass or something? I want to tell you something. This is the 80th anniversary of Kristallnacht. Broken glass. When the Nazis rose up and started dragging Jews out of their businesses, out of their apartments, out of their homes, out of their cars, beating them, killing them, breaking glass. Do you realize how outrageous it is that Richard Blumenthal and that other Democrats and people in the media keep calling this a broken glass moment? Do you understand why they're doing that? That once again, they're comparing this wittingly or unwittingly, but mostly wittingly, to Kristallnacht and the Third Reich and Hitler? Do you understand that? Then they say it's a slow-walking Saturday night massacre. Do you know why they say that? Because it's not a Saturday night massacre. Because the President of the United States did not order Mr. Whitaker or anybody else to fire Mr. Mueller. Because Mr. Mueller is the all-powerful special counsel who's just like an assistant U.S. attorney. No. He's the all-powerful special counsel. The President hasn't taken one penny from Mr. Mueller or from the FBI in its pathetic, outrageous investigation that was launched in violation of the Department of Justice regulations, where there was no criminal pretext or basis for the appointment of the special counsel in the first place. And notice the same Democrats and media who are saying Mr. Whitaker has a conflict of interest because he wrote an op-ed and he was on CNN. Notice, when it comes to Mr. Rosenstein, who recommended to the Attorney General, who then recommended to the President of the United States that he fire James Comey. And among the things that we're told Mueller's investigating is obstruction of justice when the President fired James Comey. As pathetic as that is. Among other things, it was Mr. Rosenstein who recommended it. Mr. Rosenstein is not merely a witness, as I keep hearing on cable TV. He should be a subject of this investigation. He should be a subject of this investigation. Why didn't he recuse himself? Mr. Nadler? Mr. Schiff? Mr. Swindle, or whatever the hell your name is? What about you, Morning Schmo? How about Fake Tapper? How about Don Lemonade? or Lemon, whatever, Lemon. How about all of these guys? How come they don't bring it up? They're too busy talking about a broken glass moment. A broken glass moment like this is Kristallnacht. These leftists in the media and in the Democrat Party who keep making comparisons to Hitler and the Nazis and now Kristallnacht, these people are bigots. They are bigots. I'll be right back. Exactly 80 years ago tonight, Kristallnacht took place, also known as the Night of Broken Glass. When the Nazis took to the streets, it was a pogrom against the Jews throughout Nazi Germany, carried out by the SA paramilitary forces. The SA paramilitary forces. Mr. Bloomberg, who claims to be Jewish, he also claimed to be a combat veteran in Vietnam. Blumenthal, I guess his name is. Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut has said this is a broken glass moment.
It is a break the glass moment.
See, he knows. He's actually comparing what took place with Jeff Sessions to the Nazis killing, dragging Jews out of their homes, and beating them up, to what the president did. This is a sick time in our history. All day long, the Democrats have been calling this the broken glass moment. The broken glass moment. Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, among others, the media have repeated, is this the broken glass moment? The broken glass moment. I thought to myself, how sick is this? And I bet the vast majority of the American people don't even know what they're talking about. I'll bet they don't. They're comparing a minor personnel move from a historic perspective. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's Zippo. Well, we're in a constitutional crisis. Every time the left controls anything, we're in a constitutional crisis because they despise the Constitution. All of it. That's why they're progressives. Progressives despise the Constitution. Their intellectuals despise the Constitution. They think it's too confining. They've written about this for 100 years. And that's why they fight over the Supreme Court nominations, because they want progressives on the court, meaning anti-constitutionalists. If you are nominated to the Supreme Court and you say, look, I'm an originalist. Oh, look at that. What do you favor, slavery? You favor putting immigrants in cages? You favor back alley abortions? Yeah, what is it with you in the Constitution? We like precedent. Except when we don't like precedent. They're really a superficial bunch. They're just power hungry. But they go on and on about this broken glass moment. Like, what the hell's going on here? 80 years ago, Kristallnacht, also referred to as the Night of Broken Glass. You didn't hear any of this in the media today because the media are regurgitating what the Democrats say. Why? Because survey after survey tells us the media are populated with Democrats and liberals. On the night of November 9, 1938, 80 years ago, from the Holocaust Encyclopedia, violence against Jews broke out across the Reich. And let me tell you something, all the talk on the left, when our president, the most pro-Israel, pro-Jewish, and I might say pro-American president, but the most pro-Israel, pro-Jewish president ever, quite frankly, when that slaughter happened in Pittsburgh, Andrea Mitchell and Alison Camerata and so many others where... Do you think his tone anything to do with it? You think this anything? Now, the guy's a Jew hater and a Trump hater, right? The mass murder. Didn't matter. But who is talking like white supremacists today? Who is talking like neo-Nazis today? When you take such an event as Kristallnacht and you dumb it down the way these leftists do, the way the media do, the way the Democrats do, Or like Joe Scarborough, constant references to Hitler when he's talking about the president. He's an ignoramus, Scarborough, low IQ. But when they keep in the body politic, in the media, in the culture, oh, Trump's like Hitler, his supporters are like Nazis, and this is the broken glass moment. You rewrite history. For many young people who don't know anything about this because they're not taught about it in public school, they never hear about it. It's, oh, okay, Hitler's like Trump. Oh, okay, the Republicans are like Nazis. It's like the question the other day from the PBS reporter, so-called. Do you think the Republican Party is more and more like white nationalists? I mean, where are these questions coming from? They're coming from leftists dressed up as journalists. And that's why they keep talking about the night that this is a broken glass moment. Kristallnacht is also referred to as the night of broken glass. So on the night of November 9, 1938, 80 years ago, this moment, violence against Jews broke out across the Third Reich. It appeared to be unplanned, set off by Germans' anger over assassination of a German official in Paris at the hands of a Jewish teenager. But in fact, German propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels, pay attention, free media, and other Nazis carefully organized the pogroms. In 2 days, over 250 synagogues were burned, over 7,000 Jewish businesses were trashed and looted, dozens of Jews were killed, and Jewish cemeteries, hospitals, schools, and homes were looted, while police and fire brigades stood by. The pogroms became known as Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, for the shattered glass from the store windows that littered the streets. The morning after the pogroms, 30,000 German Jewish men were arrested for the crime of being Jewish, sent to concentration camps. This was the beginning, where hundreds of them perished. Some Jewish women were also arrested and sent to local jails. Businesses owned by Jews were not allowed to reopen unless they were managed by non-Jews. Curfews were placed on Jews, limiting the hours of the day they could leave their homes. And after the night of broken glass, life was even more difficult for German and Austrian Jewish children and teenagers. Already barred from entering museums, public playgrounds, and swimming pools, now they were expelled from public schools. Jewish youngsters, like their parents, were totally segregated in Germany. In despair, many Jewish adults committed suicide. Many families tried desperately to get out of Germany and Austria. And they dare to compare the president's appointment of a temporary attorney general to Kristallnacht? The night of broken glass. This is our broken glass moment, ladies and gentlemen. Don't you know? The president is Hitler. You're Nazis. This is the Third Reich. You're white supremacists. You're racist. Don't you know? This is Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass. These people are sick. Then they talk about the tone. Mr. President, don't you think you have some responsibility for the negative tone in this country? You know what institution is dragging down this country? The media. Do the media inform the American people anymore? I mean, 10, 20%, yeah. But on the whole, is that their objective? Do the media inform the American people? Are the media really concerned about the power of government? Are they concerned with the fact that Donald Trump was elected president? If the media were really concerned about the power of government, why are so many of them progressives? Why are so many of them Democrats? The Democrat Party is all about the power of government. Progressivism is all about the power of centralized government, where a relative handful of people control an army of bureaucrats and compel the nation to conform to their ideology. Is that a free press? No. They like to call Fox state media, state-run media. This is what the left does all the time. Just like this. President of the United States makes what is historically a relatively minor employment decision. Really minor, quite frankly. And it's Kristallnacht. And he's Hitler. And they claim to be the free press. No, they're the press, but they're not the free press. There's press everywhere. You know, Larry King said the other day that Russia TV, for which he works, so we understand that, he says Russia TV does more news than CNN. CNN is the Trump network. It's really the anti-Trump network. Russia TV, he said. Now, I've never agreed with Larry King on anything, except that. I agree with him there. Now, Blumenthal, to show you what a truly sick man this is. Blumenthal, to show you what a truly sick man this is. This senator from Connecticut, where everything Trump does is the end of the world because he's such a hack partisan he can't control himself. He was aware of what he was saying when he said, this is our broken glass moment. Let me show you how sick this man is. Blumenthal's father fled Nazi Germany when he was 17 for the United States. Warned that a climate of bigotry, similar to the one that delivered Nazi genocide, is now swirling in the underbelly of the United States. This is from the Hartford Courant article, January 2018. Richard Blumenthal, you're a disgrace. You are a just unbelievable fool to make comments like that. It's absolutely appalling. What they're really upset about, ladies and gentlemen, is they lost the 2016 election fair and square. And what they're really upset about is they lost the 2000 election fair and square. So now they want to get rid of the Electoral College. And look what's going on in Florida. They don't accept election results. And even when they lose, they win. Because they control this massive bureaucracy that they created. And for the most part, they control the courts. So the unelected parts of government, one that's not even in the Constitution, the other that acts absolutely extra-constitutionally, particularly with activists dressed up as judges, doesn't matter who wins the election. They decide. DACA cannot be replaced, even though it was unconstitutionally created. No, Mr. President, you can't have the Keystone XL pipeline because I've decided as a single federal judge that, you didn't take climate change into consideration enough. Any excuse. And then they dress it up as a judicial decision. They're the totalitarians. They're the tyrants, not us. We want government out of your face. We believe in individual liberty. We believe in the founding principles. And we're not going to allow those who embrace the ideology of Marx and Engels and Hegel and Rousseau, 3 or 4 of whom come out of the German ideology, we're not going to let them paint us like they choose to. And we're not going to allow the party of slavery and segregation and Jim Crow to claim that we, the people of liberty, who believe in a colorblind society, are somehow racist because we don't embrace their ideology. That just ain't going to happen. And I might remind you that it was the ambassador to the court of St. James, Britain, during the presidency of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was communicating with Hitler behind the scenes, Joe Kennedy Sr. Even FDR had to yank his ticket and bring him back to be chairman of the SEC. And I might remind you, it was the New York Times. The New York Times that censored reporting coming out of the Holocaust and the Third Reich. The paper of record. Right, Maggie Haberman? The paper of record. I'll be right back. Mark, you have this wrong. What the liberals in the media mean is breaking glass like a fire alarm. No, they don't. No, they don't. Too many references to Nazis and the Third Reich. No. Not on the anniversary, Chris. No. Breaking glass is like a fire alarm. No, it's not a fire alarm. It's in the same genre that they've been using now. I just read to you what Blumenthal said in January 2018. Didn't I just read that, Mr. Producer? Blumenthal. He's the guy leading the charge on this broken glass. Blumenthal's father fled Nazi Germany when he was 17 for the United States, warned that a climate of bigotry similar to the one that delivered Nazi genocide is now swirling in the underbelly of the United States. January 2018, Hartford Courant. No, he means a fire alarm, Mark. Now, don't call me with stupidity. Call somebody else. I know exactly what they mean. They keep comparing this president to Hitler. They keep comparing us to Nazis and racists and white supremacists. I know exactly what they mean. Everybody better wake up to this. This is no joke. He means a fire alarm. No, he doesn't. Although you're giving him an idea, a way to try and slip out of it. Don't let him slip out of it. I'm not going to let him slip out of it. The media today is betraying the American people. The media today is on a jihad. May I say that? They say that about us all the time. Oh, yes, I think I may. Free speech. That's in there, too. And everybody knows it, including those participating in it. And these so-called media professional organizations have no intention of informing its members that they need to clean up their act and conduct themselves in a professional manner. You can ask a president questions relatively aggressively. You can ask a president pointed questions. It's, there one president you couldn't. Barack Milhouse Benito Obama. You ask him one question, he filibusters for 20 minutes. And you better not interrupt them. And if you do interrupt them, the other reporters will attack you. I'll be back. President of the United States better understands the Constitution than most of the media, most of the Democrats, most of the law professors. Remember, they're professors. Outside the White House today, cut one, go.
Matt Whitaker has not gone through the Senate process.
Now he says, Matt Whitaker has not gone through the Senate process. So in other words, here we have an intrepid reporter asking a question that any Democrat would say. He makes an assertion and puts a question mark behind it. Matt Whitaker has not gone through the Senate. No, he's a temporary appointee under the Vacancies Act. Mr. Reporter. President starts to say, yeah, neither has Mueller. Go ahead.
Mueller, excuse me. You talk about the Senate process. Mueller is
now notice the reporter doesn't even want an answer. Just keeps talking over the president. This is why we, the people, find you people to be obnoxious, unprofessional, leftists, never Trumpers. Go ahead.
He hasn't gone through the Senate process. So you're saying Whitaker hasn't, but Whitaker has. Wait a minute. Because he was a really distinguished U.S. attorney in Iowa, and he was approved by everybody. Because to be U.S. attorney, that's top of the line. He was a highly respected. In fact, I'll tell you, the ambassador to China, as you know, Terry Branstad, who used to be the governor of Iowa, he told me that what a great choice that is, that he is one of the most respected people in all of Iowa. And that was coming from Terry Branstad, who was the governor.
All right, so now, just to show you how dumb the media are, just to show you how dumb the Democrats are, I hope you Supreme Court justices, and you know who you are listening to this program now. Because hopefully one day this will wind up with you. Justice Roberts, Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Gorsuch, Justice Thomas, Justice Alito. Why would reporters be so concerned with protecting an inferior employee of the federal government? Why would Democrats be so concerned with protecting an inferior employee of a Democrat? Have you ever heard them demand the protection of any other inferior employee of the federal bureaucracy? Of an assistant United States attorney? Never. Why is that? Because the special counsel's not an inferior employee. And I also say this for the idiot husband of Kellyanne Conway. What's his name again? What kind of husband is this? What is this goofball? What kind of husband is this? He embarrasses his wife all the time. Pal, if you don't love your wife, then deal with it legally. Why do you try to humiliate her? And humiliate your children? What kind of a man are you? What kind of a husband are you? Oh, George Conway. That's right, George Conway. Another Trump hater. Who doesn't know his what from a what. What's with you, George? Don't you love your wife? You got to make a public spectacle of yourself? I mean, you ever seen anything like this? This George Conway? The media love George Conway because they use him to attack his wife. George, what a guy, what a husband. Absolute slob. Anyway, where was I? So if Mueller, justices, Mueller, let me make my case to the justices. Your Honors, if Mr. Mueller was merely an inferior employee, under the decision in Morrison versus Olson, why all the demands to protect him? Why the insistence that if the president fires him, there's a constitutional crisis? Is there any other inferior employee on the face of the federal bureaucracy? If the president fires that inferior employee, it creates a constitutional crisis? Is there any other inferior employee in the federal bureaucracy that Congress keeps threatening to protect against the President of the United States? Is there any other inferior employee in the federal bureaucracy where Congress says they will impeach the President, the House, should he dare to fire him? The media and the Democrats, one and the same, are making the case that Mr. Mueller's not some inferior employee. He's not even some United States attorney. He's a big, strong man with a big, strong office that can investigate the President of the United States. And nobody, and we mean nobody, is allowed to interfere with him. He cannot be fired, according to members of Congress and according to the media, unlike every other inferior employee and even principal employee of the federal government. If Mr. Mueller is not a principal employee of the federal government, a principal official of the federal government, then I've never seen one. And the president understands this. Lawrence Tribe doesn't understand it. Most of the Harvard faculty doesn't understand it. Clearly, the low IQ types at MSLSD and the Constipated News Network, they don't care. They don't understand. But I do. Under the Appointments Clause, given the decision in 1988. Right? Senior judicial analyst, my good friend, Napolitano? There really is a big difference. There really is. Now, in the case of Mr. Whitaker, he's not required to recuse himself. This is supposed to be an investigation into Russia and Trump world. Mueller never had anything to do with Russia or Trump world or the Trump campaign. Well, he was on CNN and he wrote an op-ed. So what? Eric Holder's been a left-wing Democrat hack his entire life. That didn't stop him from being a judge, from being Deputy Attorney General, or the Attorney General of the United States. That's not the test. And Mr. Whitaker, compared to Mr. Holder, is pure as the driven snow for all you snowflakes out there. And Mr. Rosenstein, well, Mr. Rosenstein is all kinda gummed up. Mr. Rosenstein is a fact witness. Should be a subject of the investigation. But the Democrats love him. Do you know why? Because he appointed a special counsel. You know why else? Because he's weak. You know why else? Because he's a coward. But Mr. Mueller, you better not touch him. We'll impeach you. It'll be a constitutional crisis. A slow-walking, a Saturday Night Massacre. It's the broken glass moment. I'll be right back. All right, let's take a few calls. Roy, Orlando, Florida, the great WSKY country. Boy, are you hearing us on WSKY, really?
WSKY, and I'm in the Villages, Florida.
Wow. Thank you.
It's an
How
honor
are
to
you?
talk to you, Mark, and I want to give you my blessings for your dad.
Thank you very much. You know what? You know what? You're a retired cop, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a copy of his book, and I should be doing this to cops. So don't hang up after your call, okay?
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Mark.
Thank you.
I'm working 10-hour shifts now, and I enjoy coming home later at night because I get to listen to you. I faithfully listened to you when I was in New York. Today at work, what really got to me was a guy had this sign on his desk, "Protect Mueller, save our country." I mean, what the hell is it going to take for these people to wake up?
No. But Mueller is a imaginary figure to them. That's their hope to try and take Trump out. Right?
There's no respect for our president.
You know what I have on my desk? Here's my sign on my desk. You want me to read it to you?
Go ahead.
The duty of a patriot is to protect his country from its government. What do you think about that one?
And that's coming from a constitutionalist that knows what he's doing.
The whole Constitution. They create a government, and then they protect us from the government. That's the whole point. They created a government really to protect the civil society. And what's happening is the government under progressivism is devouring the civil society. Anyway, listen, don't hang up. I want to give you a copy of my dad's book. I appreciate it. I am broadcasting from Florida today. I'm down here to see my mother this weekend. And I have to be honest with you, it's very tough. I'm always honest with you. I wear my emotions on my sleeve with you. And my father, from time to time, he would give me some of his artwork. And from where I broadcast, it's on the walls. And during the break, I get up and I take a good close look at it. And he had a wide variety of interests and techniques in what he did. I've got his book, Our Police, right on my desk. It's just a tough night. Let me put it to you that way. Let us go to Aaron. New York, the great WABC. Go.
Thanks for taking my call, Mark. It's an honor to speak with you. You're a great American and an inspiring conservative intellectual. And
I'm a perspiring conservative intellectual. Thank you, sir.
I wanted to add to your comment about Kristallnacht and the comparisons to Hitler. It's something that I've been saying since that's been bubbling around the media. It's that it's an insult to the 6 million Jews that were systematically enslaved and murdered at the hands of the Nazis. It's an insult to their memory. It's an insult to their families and the survivors and their children. And it's great that you're calling them out on their bigotry for, comparing what's going on now to what happened back then.
Well, I want to thank you because I am disgusted. I hold these people in contempt. They turn these things into political talking points to try and score points, rhetorical points. And they are bigots. They truly are bigots. To dismiss what took place in Germany, to dismiss the Holocaust, as the New York Times essentially did, for the media to continue to cover that up and treat that as the paper of record, to continue to cite the New York Times, for reporters to want to work for that lousy, good-for-nothing institution, and then tell us they stand for freedom of the press. They stand for themselves, the press. They do not stand for the concept of freedom of the press. They hate us. They hate at least half the country. They call us names. They talk down to us. It's not freedom of the press. That's a lousy, rotten, good-for-nothing press. That's what that is. And to continue, as you point out, to continue to besmirch the people who suffered and died during the Holocaust under the Third Reich by treating what took place over there like superficial political talking points, laugh lines, is nothing short of bigotry. That's exactly what it is. I'm going to keep calling them out, whether they like it or not. What do you think of that?
I think that's a great idea. Keep up the good work and saying the good word.
All right, thank you, sir. Which means they will do everything they can to destroy me. They will do everything they can to destroy me. And here's what my family knows about me. I say what I believe, and I believe things I've really thought about. That I've really thought about. You're not listening to somebody who just looks at a website or somebody gives them a talking point. No. I give these things a lot of thought. And I embrace them, and I revere them. And I'm going to go down fighting. Some people go down physically, literally fighting. Our military, our cops at times, and so forth. In this profession. If that's the way it is, then that's the way it is. But I'm not going to be a Pollyanna about this stuff. I do more on this program to defend the Constitution and all the Bill of Rights and all aspects of the Constitution, including freedom of the press, than any one of these leftists on CNN or MSNBC. Tell me, what has Jake Tapper done for freedom of the press? What has Jim Acosta done for freedom of the press? They have betrayed freedom of the press. They've betrayed the purpose. They defend Jim Acosta. Jim Acosta is doing nothing but hijacking a presidential press conference, and by doing that, he's not punishing the president, he's punishing we the people. The press are supposed to be in that room to ask serious questions, to get serious information for we the people. For we the people. They say, we're not the enemy of the people. Then why do you hate us so much? On your very networks, you have guests and commentators who call us racists when we're not. I had Shelby Steele on my program on Fox a few months back, as you know, an African-American, a brilliant, brilliant man, and he's written about this topic many times in many places. And he says the left used racism to shut down debate and to claim a higher moral authority for their political views, and that if you don't agree with them, in fact, if you disagree with them, then there's something wrong with you. And we see it play out time and time again in the press. That's not freedom of press. That's the press, and it's lousy. I'll be right back. Sean, Columbia, North Carolina, Sirius Satellite, go. I thought Columbia was in South Carolina.
It is, Mark, on my way back to Charlotte. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Mark, I want to thank you twofold. First, broadly for what you do. You are a true patriot. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
But more specifically for tonight, going into the whole breaking of the glass, unbelievable. You know, initially I was falling for the ruse that it was breaking the glass for the fire alarm. And it is unbelievable how evil these people are. And listening to you on the radio.
And by the way, if they were talking about a fire alarm, wouldn't they say, it's time to pull the fire alarm? Yes.
Oh, of course.
Break the glass and pull it. But they didn't say that. This is our broken glass moment. Our broken glass moment on the anniversary of Kristallnacht. They can't run that by me. I hit that fastball right out of the park.
It's amazing. It is unbelievable. And these are the same people that throw a fit about the whole Halloween costumes and blackface. Yet they
Well, look, I get the blackface stuff because that was very, very derogatory. So I have to say I agree with that. But anyway, go ahead.
And I will tell you, at first I laughed at it. And then when you hear people talk about it and you go, you know what? I get it. But this is disgusting. This is disgusting what they're doing.
Don't you think it's bigoted? Don't you think when you are taking an event like this and you're downplaying it in order to score cheap political talking points, I find that to be the essence of bigotry, quite frankly. You have people who are horrifically murdered, horrific genocide, and you got news people and commentators and politicians and this is our broken glass. Oh, yeah, that appointment of Whitaker. Are they out of their minds? This is such a tiny, insignificant event that 40 years from now, nobody's going to even remember it. Whitaker. Big deal.
It's evil. It's pure evil what they're doing.
All right, Sean. Thanks for your call, sir.